Very important for you to go in by different routes to the cache. If the cache is hidden over here, go in this way one day. Come in from this direction another day. Come in from this direction. And whatever you do, don't always go and return by the same path. You've got to know how to find it again. Don't rely on your memory, because your memory can fail, conditions can change, or you might have to tell somebody else how to get there. So I recommend that you identify landmarks and that you're able to recreate a good map and then hide the map. There are security risks involved in having the location indicated on a piece of paper, but the advantage is that you'll be able to communicate that to someone you trust to go and recover the cache. Don't have one map for all of your survival caches, and don't hide all your maps in the same location. You understand what I'm saying? I'm able to indicate to people how to get to this tree because I know everybody in the family knows where this tree is. It's one of the few beech trees on the property. But this is a beech, so I'll tell them to come up to the beech, and I'd tell them to look in a easterly direction to find the two trees that are right close together and head up to them. I'd get more specific about this and actually draw this wash. I don't know if you can see it from there, but there is a bit of a wash that's been created by heavy rains. So what I would tell them is to look for the two trees that are right together, growing around a rock near the wash. And I would estimate this distance as being 30 feet in an easterly direction from the beach. Once I get to this tree, I would tell them just to go continue easterly up the wash about another 30 feet, and then look for two cedar trees next to each other. If you're out west of the United States, you would call these junipers. We call them eastern red cedar here. I can get even more specific. I would tell them that I've got two cedar trees approximately in line with what's obviously a poplar. They're easy to identify even in the winter because of their branching pattern and the smooth bark. So I'd tell them that once they found these cedars approximately in line, to look in the first cedar that's closest to the wash in a southerly sort of direction from the poplar. Of course, you realize that for this technique to work, everybody you're communicating with has to understand the compass directions and be able to get their bearings here in the woods, even without a compass and without the sun to indicate. If your people don't know, or if you don't know, then you simply need to have a different means of identifying the location of the thing. For instance, you could mark one tree with some sort of indicator. It could be a hash mark, it could be a trail blaze. I think that these two trees right here are fairly prominent, even if you don't know what kind of tree they are, just because they're in the wash and with the rock. So if you can get somebody to that tree, then you can indicate, instead of saying head east, you can just tell them continue up the wash, and then it's in the first cedar tree that you come to on the left. So that way you don't have to be able to indicate compass directions. To be able to get your bearings without a compass and without the sky, that almost absolutely requires familiarity with the terrain. So they've got to be able to know where they are on property that they're familiar with. So it pays to familiarize yourself with your territory. When you can, it's good to use natural game trails because they look like game trails instead of paths made by man. I know this is fake, okay, I'm just illustrating it, but I'm making the point here that when you ingress and egress out of the woods to and from your survival cache, you don't want to be too highly visible, all right? So here's a possibility, is to take your truck and fill it up with material to work on your spring, some pipes, a couple of concrete bags, a tool bag, and then drive up here and work on your spring for a while, and then make off into the woods with your cache, come back to the truck, and everything's cool. It looks like you just went up into the woods to work on your spring. Ingress is when you go in, and egress is when you go out. That's where the house is. So when I leave that area, I'm gonna head up into the woods either that way or this way from the house, just depending on the circumstances. And then whichever way I go, once I hit the woods, I can reach the cache without ever being exposed again to view from the house. Let's say you have a large woods that's round. Okay, you have a large round woods like this, and here's your house. And when you go into the woods, you're gonna go deep into the woods, right to the center, and there's your cache. So that once you get into the woods, you're hidden from view, okay? But there's another possibility. Let's say your cache is over here at the edge of the woods. It's still completely concealed from the house or any neighbors. But you could leave off in this direction and then make it to the woods and then go around in a zigzag pattern in case you're being followed and eventually make it to the cache. Don't go to the cache and leave it by the same path. If the cache is hidden over here, go in this way one day. Come in from this direction another day. Come in from this direction. And whatever you do, don't always go and return by the same path. And don't give away the fact that you've just been to the cache. If we're in a situation where you're having to live off of supplies that you have cached away from the house, a possibility would be that there's a lot of looting going on and you've somehow persuaded people that you don't have anything for them to steal, and yet you're still eating. Well, you're getting it from your cache, okay? So what you don't want to do is go empty-handed into the woods and then come back heavy laden with a bunch of supplies. Go into the woods with a bag that's full of supplies to work on the spring, or whatever the case may be. Just make sure that you look the same going into the woods and coming out of the woods. Go into the woods with your gun as if you were hunting. Be sure and get a couple of squirrels and bring them back along with all the junk in your cache. Good principles of ingress and egress. Here's another one. I know it may seem counterintuitive, but the fact is it's actually easier to spot your target from a distance on an overcast day because there's less contrast between the bright and the dark, and your eyes are able to distinguish more detail inside of the woods on a day that's like this, with an even overcast lighting coming from the sky. So what you want is a bright sunny day when you go in, or of course at night. But if you're traveling daytime and you want to go into the woods, do it on a sunny day when it's harder to see into the woods from a distance.